Welcome to Skytech-Lens. For over a century, the United States-Canada border symbolized one of the world's strongest partnerships, but now, that relationship is under strain. Tariffs, political posturing and economic retaliation have replaced friendly handshakes with tense negotiations. What started as a dispute over steel and aluminum has spiraled, threatening the fabric of both economies. Business owners, exporters and families facing rising prices. Canada is being forced to rethink its reliance on the US and chart a new self-sufficient path. In this video, we'll explore how a trade war is pushing Canada to become more resilient and what that means for North America's future. Once, Canadian license plates filled American border towns, fueling local economies with cross-border shopping and tourism. That flow has slowed to a trickle. Trade tensions and a hostile political climate have made many Canadians feel unwelcome, prompting them to spend at home. The Trump slump hit hard. Same-day car trips to the US dropped, while American visits to Canada rose. For US towns near the border, the impact is severe: empty storefronts, quiet malls, and struggling hotels. States like New York and Washington, once reliant on Canadian shoppers, now face double-digit retail declines. The pain extends beyond retail, hitting hospitality, gas stations, and attractions. Canadians are discovering their own country, supporting local businesses, and making new travel habits stick. Even Florida, a favorite for Canadian snowbirds, has seen a dip in visitors and real estate interest. Ironically, policies meant to protect American interests are hurting American businesses most. The economic wall built by tariffs is choking off the flow of people, money, and goodwill. Social and cultural ties are fraying, replaced by distance and uncertainty. For many U.S. border communities, the question isn't when Canadians will return, but if they ever will in the same numbers. The cracks at the border are widening, revealing a deeper fracture in the U.S.-Canada relationship. The easy camaraderie of border life is fading, replaced by economic anxiety. The longer this lasts, the more permanent these changes become. What was once a spontaneous trip now feels like a risk. The damage is more than economic, it's personal. The border, once a bridge, is becoming a barrier. The trade war escalated fast. What began with steel and aluminum tariffs exploded into a sweeping 35% levy on Canadian goods. This wasn't targeted, it hit everything from auto parts to food, devastating Canadian exporters overnight. Businesses scrambled for loopholes. But the rules were airtight, and enforcement was strict. Long-standing supply chains collapsed as U.S. buyers turned elsewhere. For many Canadian companies, the U.S. market was suddenly out of reach. The pain crossed the border. American consumers faced higher prices on cars, groceries, and more. Tariffs meant to punish Canada became a tax on U.S. households. Companies on both sides faced impossible choices: absorb the costs, pass them on, or lose business. The integrated North American supply chain became a liability, not a strength. Previous trade disputes allowed for creative workarounds, but this time, enforcement was relentless. Uncertainty became the new normal, chilling investment and long-term planning. The psychological toll was as real as the financial one. For Canada, the message was clear: dependence on the US was a critical vulnerability. For the US, the unintended consequences were mounting. The trade war was no longer abstract, it was reshaping lives and economies. The effects were immediate, and the damage was real. Both nations were forced to confront the true cost of economic conflict. The old rules no longer applied. With the US market suddenly hostile, Canada had to act fast. Diversification became the new mantra, no longer just a buzzword but a national imperative. Canada pivoted to global partners, leveraging trade deals like the CPTPP and CETA. Asia-Pacific and Europe became top priorities, opening doors to hundreds of millions of new customers. Trade missions shifted from diplomacy to deal-making, targeting real growth. Exports to non-US markets surged, while reliance on the US began to shrink. For businesses, this shift was a lifeline. New buyers in Japan or Germany replaced lost US contracts. The process was slow and challenging, but the direction was clear. Canada was building a more resilient, globally competitive economy. The government provided support, but companies had to adapt to new markets and regulations. The US faced long-term losses as Canadian partners found alternatives. Once lost, market share is hard to regain, even if tariffs are lifted. The playbook for Canadian trade has been rewritten. The era of overwhelming US dependence is ending. This pivot is about survival and future-proofing the economy. The transition isn't easy, but it's necessary. Canada is learning to thrive beyond its southern neighbor. The new strategy is global, not just continental. The game has changed for good. Canada is charting its own course. As the trade war raged, a grassroots Buy Canadian movement swept the country. It wasn't just a slogan, it became a daily act of economic patriotism. Canadians checked labels, supported local businesses, and shared alternatives to US brands. Supermarkets and retailers responded, dedicating more space to Canadian products. Social media campaigns like Buy Canadian went viral, fueling a surge in local pride. Small businesses and farmers saw a boost as consumers rallied behind them. The movement wasn't just about defiance, it was about rediscovering quality and community. Compliance with USMCA rules became crucial, strengthening domestic supply chains. Manufacturers sourced more materials locally, creating new opportunities and jobs. The goal: build a resilient economy less vulnerable to foreign shocks. Economic nationalism united Canadians across regions and backgrounds. People accepted higher prices if it meant supporting Canadian workers. The longer the dispute lasted, the more ingrained these habits became. Retailers doubled down on local sourcing, creating a virtuous cycle of demand and supply. The Buy Canadian movement became a powerful force for self-reliance. It wasn't just a reaction, it was a proactive step toward a new economic identity. Canada was building strength from within. The movement redefined what it means to be economically independent. The economic battle spilled into politics, with Ottawa taking an unusually tough stance. Canada responded to US tariffs with targeted retaliatory measures, signaling it wouldn't be bullied. This was about more than economics. It was about sovereignty and respect. Canadian leaders rallied international allies, defending a rules-based trading order. Public support in Canada was overwhelming, even if it meant higher prices. The country was united behind a firm response. In the US, cracks appeared as lawmakers and industries hit by retaliation voiced concern. Business groups warned of job losses and economic fallout. Policy unpredictability from Washington created constant uncertainty. Old channels of negotiation broke down, replaced by confrontation. The USMCA Sunset Review Clause now hangs over North American trade, ensuring ongoing instability. Instability is the new normal, making long-term planning difficult. Canada must balance defense with the need for a working relationship. Diversification is now a permanent strategy, not a temporary fix. The political landscape has fundamentally changed. Trust and goodwill have eroded, forcing both countries to reassess their partnership. For Canada, it's a lesson in strategic independence. For the US, it's a warning about the costs of economic aggression. The chess game continues, with the next move uncertain. The future of North America is being rewritten. The trade war was a crucible for Canada, exposing vulnerabilities but also sparking resilience. The shock of tariffs forced businesses and government to adapt fast. Canada's pivot to Europe and Asia wasn't just reactive, it was a strategic overhaul. The economy is becoming more diverse and robust, less tied to US whims. Internally, the Buy Canadian movement united the country and strengthened local markets. Economic patriotism gave the government backbone in negotiations. Ottawa's firm, principled response marked a new era in foreign policy. The old assumptions of a special relationship are gone, replaced by realism. The turmoil revealed hidden strengths and forced overdue reforms. Canada is now on a path to greater independence and global integration. The changes underway are permanent, not just crisis management. The nation is emerging tougher, more cautious, and more innovative. Communities and businesses faced hardship, but responded with adaptation. The journey to economic independence is long, but the direction is set. The USMCA's uncertainty lingers, but Canada is moving forward. The trade war was a catalyst for necessary evolution. Canada is building a future where prosperity isn't dependent on a single partner. The story is one of growth through adversity. The trade war has permanently altered the US-Canada relationship. Canada's pivot to global markets and the Buy Canadian movement have set a new course. This is a long-term transformation, not a temporary reaction. The consequences will shape North America for years to come. For Canada, self-reliance is now a marathon, not a sprint. For the US, the lesson is clear. Economic partnerships are a two-way street. The future will be decided by choices in boardrooms, at negotiating tables, and by everyday consumers. The story isn't over. What happens next is up to all of us. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates.